My name is Rachel, and 3 months ago, I stood in a courtroom and watched my own sister's hands shake as a lawyer read out 4 words that ended her life as she knew it. But to understand how we got there, to understand how my sister went from the girl who braided my hair when I was 7 to a woman who forged our dying mother's signature, you need to go back to the beginning. Because this isn't just a story about money. This is a story about what happens when greed gets inside a family, and how the truth always finds a way out, even from the grave. Stay with me to the end, because the final page of this story is something none of us, not even the lawyers, saw coming. Growing up, everyone called Denise the responsible one. She was 4 years older than me, straight A student, the one who got the scholarship, the one who moved to the city and got the corporate job with the nice title and the nicer car. I was the artsy one, the one who stayed close to home, who became a nurse, who visited Mom every Sunday without fail for 15 years. You'd think that would count for something. It didn't. Not to Denise, and eventually not to the law, not without a fight. Our mother, Carol, raised us alone after our father left when I was 5. She worked 2 jobs, days at a school cafeteria, nights cleaning offices downtown, so that Denise could go to college first, and so that eventually I could go too. Mom never remarried. She used to say, "I don't need a man, I have my girls." She meant it. Every birthday, every holiday, every scraped knee, it was Mom. By the time Mom turned 70, she owned one significant asset in this world, the house. A modest 3-bedroom on Maple Grove Lane, paid off after 30 years of scrimping, sitting on a piece of land that had, because of new development, nearby quietly tripled in value. Mom didn't know that. I didn't know that either. Denise knew. Denise always knew things like that. 2 years ago, Mom was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. It started small. Misplaced keys, forgotten names, repeating the same story twice in one visit. I noticed first because I was there every week. Denise visited maybe once a month, sometimes less, but when I raised it, she waved me off. "She's just getting older, Rachel. Don't be dramatic." I wasn't being dramatic. 6 months later, Mom couldn't remember what she'd eaten for breakfast. And that's when Denise suddenly started visiting a lot more. Looking back now, I can map it almost week by week. The exact moment. Denise's calendar filled up with check-ins on Mom. At the time, I was relieved. I thought finally she's stepping up. I had no idea what she was actually doing during those visits. It was late October when Mom first mentioned it to me in one of her clearer moments. "Denise brought some papers for me to sign," she said, sitting in her recliner, wrapped in the blue cardigan I'd bought her for her birthday. Something about the house. I don't really understand it, but she said it was important. My stomach dropped, but I told myself not to panic. "What kind of papers, Mom?" "I don't know, honey. Denise handles all that now. She's good with numbers. If I had $1 for every time I heard that sentence over the next 2 months, I could have paid off my own mortgage." I called Denise that night. I asked her directly, "What papers? What for?" She laughed it off. "Just some estate planning stuff, Rach. You know Mom needs help managing things now. Someone has to. As if I hadn't been managing Mom's medications, her doctor's appointments, her grocery runs, her loneliness, for 2 years while Denise built her career 3 hours away. But I let it go. That was my first mistake. I trusted my sister because she was my sister, and because some part of me, the part that grew up idolizing her, still couldn't imagine she'd do something truly wrong. I was wrong about that. Dead wrong. By January, Mom's condition had deteriorated sharply. She started forgetting my name sometimes, calling me Denise, or once, calling me by our long-dead grandmother's name. The doctor told us this was expected. A natural progression, but recommended. We start discussing long-term care and gently get her affairs formally in order while she still had lucid windows. I brought this up with Denise, thinking we'd handle it together, like sisters. Instead, she told me she'd already looked into it. "Already looked into what exactly?" I asked. "Power of attorney. The house, all of it. I've got a lawyer friend helping me draft everything." A lawyer friend, not a family lawyer. Not someone Mom had ever met before. Not someone I was invited to speak with. I should have demanded to see the documents right then. I should have insisted on being present for every single meeting from that point forward. Instead, I told myself Denise was just trying to take initiative, that she was stressed too, that I should be grateful she was finally involved. I gave her the benefit of the doubt one more time. That benefit of the doubt cost me almost everything. Mom passed away in March, peacefully in her sleep, in the home she'd worked her whole life to keep. I was the one who found her. I was the one who called Denise at 6 a.m. and heard her voice crack on the other end of the line. Genuine grief? I believed then, and I still believe it now. Whatever else Denise did, I don't doubt she loved our mother. That's what makes the rest of this so hard to forgive. The funeral was small. Mom didn't have a huge circle, just a handful of old co-workers, a few neighbors, our cousins. I stood at the front with Denise, both of us in black, both of us holding each other up. For one single day, we were just sisters, grieving together, the way it should have always been. That truce lasted exactly 11 days. 11 days after the funeral, I got a call from a lawyer's office I didn't recognize. Not our family's longtime attorney, Mr. Halbrook, who'd handled Mom's affairs for 20 years, a different firm entirely. The woman on the phone asked me to come in for the reading of the will. Something about that phrase made the hair on my arm stand up. Mom's will, the one I remembered helping her update years earlier with Mr. Halbrook, split everything evenly between Denise and me. So why was a firm I'd never heard of calling me? I walked into that office 3 days later, and Denise was already sitting there, dressed sharp, calm as still water, like she already knew exactly what was about to happen. The lawyer opened a folder and read from a document dated just 4 months earlier, January, 4 months before Mom died. A document that revoked the old will entirely. In this new one, the house, the only real thing our mother owned, went 100% to Denise. I received a single line. The contents of my jewelry box, to be divided as my daughter Denise sees fit. Divided as Denise sees fit. My own inheritance handed to me at my sister's discretion, like a tip left on a restaurant table. I sat there in silence for what felt like a full minute. Then I asked the only question that mattered. Can I see Mom's signature? The lawyer slid the document across the table. I stared at that signature for a long time. I'd watched my mother sign birthday cards, checks, school permission slips, her name on 1,000 pieces of paper across my entire life. I knew her handwriting the way you know your own heartbeat. This wasn't it. It was close. Close enough to fool a lawyer who'd never met her before. Close enough to fool a notary rushing through a stack of paperwork. But the loop on the C in Carol curved the wrong way. My mother's hand, weakened by early tremors from her condition, always dragged slightly on the tail of her last name. The signature was too clean, too confident, too steady for a woman who, by January, could barely hold a coffee cup without spilling it. I looked up at Denise. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at her phone. Denise, I said, did Mom sign this herself? Of course she did, Denise snapped, too fast, too defensive. I was there. Ask the notary. I did ask the notary. 2 weeks later, that answer would matter more than either of us knew. I didn't confront Denise again that day. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of that lawyer. I didn't give either of them the satisfaction. I gathered my things, thanked the attorney for her time, and walked out into the parking lot, where I sat in my car for 45 minutes before I could drive. Then I started digging. I pulled every card, every note, every scrap of paper Mom had written to me over the last 5 years. Birthday cards, a grocery list she'd once left on my kitchen counter, a note taped to my old bedroom door reminding me to feed her cat Wild. She was at a doctor's appointment. I laid them all out on my dining room table like evidence, because that's exactly what they were about to become. I called Mr. Halbrook, our old family attorney, the one who'd handled Mom's original will. He remembered Mom fondly, remembered our family, and when I explained what had happened, I heard him go quiet on the other end of the line. Rachel, he said carefully, your mother called my office in December. She wanted to ask me a question about updating her will. My assistant has a note about it right here. My blood went cold. What did she ask? She asked whether she was allowed to change her mind about a will after she'd already signed something. She sounded confused. My assistant told her to come in and speak with me directly, so we could review everything properly. She never called back. Because 11 days after that phone call in January, a lawyer friend of Denise's had already drawn up new paperwork. And by March, Mom was gone. I found the notary's office listed on the document. A small shop wedged between a nail salon and a dry cleaner, 20 minutes from Denise's apartment. Not near Mom's house. Not near mine, near Denise. I walked in and asked as calmly as I could manage whether the notary remembered notarizing a document for a woman named Carol in January, The notary, a tired-looking man in his 50s, pulled up his logbook without much hesitation. Small businesses like his still keep everything on paper, thank God. He remembered. Of course he remembered, because something about that day had bothered him enough that he'd written a small note in the margin. Client appeared unsteady. Daughter answered most questions for her. My mother, a woman with early dementia, being asked to sign away the only asset she owned, sat in that office while my sister answered the questions on her behalf. And this notary, doing his one job, stamped it anyway. I asked him if he'd be willing to say that in writing, if it ever came to that. He looked at me for a long moment and then he nodded. "I've got a mother too," he said quietly. "Yeah, I'll say it. I didn't go straight to a lawyer, not yet. Some small, stubborn part of me wanted to give Denise one last chance to come clean. One last chance to be my sister instead of my opponent. I called her that night. I talked to the notary," I said, no preamble. "I talked to Mr. Halbrook too. Mom called him in December, confused about a will she said she'd already signed. 'Denise, what did you do?' There was a long silence. Then, instead of an apology, instead of an explanation, I heard something I'll never forget. My sister's voice, cold in a way I'd never heard from her before. 'You don't understand what it's like,' she said. 'I have 2 kids in private school, a mortgage I can barely make. You got to live rent-free in Mom's shadow your whole life playing the good daughter, and I got left to actually build something. That house is worth more than you know, Rachel. And I am not splitting it so you can feel good about yourself.' I asked her straight out, 'Did you forge Mom's signature?' She didn't answer that question, not then. Instead, she said, 'Fight me on this, and I promise you'll regret it,' and she hung up the phone. That was the moment I stopped hesitating, hired an attorney who specialized in probate disputes and elder fraud, and a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Patricia Reyes, who'd seen cases like this more times than she could count. She listened to everything, the notary's notes, Mr. Halbrook's account of Mom's confused December phone call, my collection of Mom's real signatures, the medical records showing the sharp decline in Mom's cognitive state by January. 'This is a strong case,' Patricia told me. 'But strong cases still take time. Are you prepared for that?' 'Because your sister is not going down without a fight.' I told her I was prepared. I had no idea what that actually meant. Over the following weeks, Denise's lawyer sent letter after letter, painting me as a bitter, jealous sister trying to smear a grieving woman's name over money. They claimed Mom had been of sound mind. They claimed the notary was simply describing normal caution around an elderly client. Nothing more. They claimed I hadn't visited enough to know Mom's real state of mind, a claim so absurd, given that I was the one who'd been there every single Sunday for 15 years, that Patricia actually laughed out loud reading it. But claims like that plant seeds of doubt, even when they're false. That's the part nobody warns you about, how exhausting it is to defend the truth against a well-funded lie. Denise was deposed. On a Tuesday in early June, I sat in the room, per my lawyer's advice, and watched my sister answer questions under oath for 3 hours. She was polished, rehearsed. She had an answer for almost everything. Almost. When Patricia asked her to describe in detail the moment our mother signed the new will, Denise said Mom had read the document herself and signed it without assistance. But the notary's sworn statement, the one I'd secured weeks earlier, said the opposite. Said Denise had answered the questions on Mom's behalf, that Mom appeared unsteady and confused. When confronted with that contradiction, Denise's composure cracked for the first time. She stumbled over her words, said Mom was just having a slow day, then said she didn't remember exactly who spoke during the appointment. The lawyer representing her tried to step in, tried to redirect. But the damage in that room was already done. Everyone at that table could see it. My sister was lying, and she wasn't nearly as good at it as she thought she was. I want to tell you I felt triumphant in that moment. I didn't. I felt sick, because underneath all of it, I still loved her. I still wanted, somehow, for there to be an explanation that made this okay. There wasn't one. 2 weeks after that deposition, Patricia called me with something unexpected, while going through boxes of Mom's belongings that I'd kept in storage. Things Denise hadn't bothered to sort through, because in her mind, the house and everything material inside it was already hers. I found a small wooden box in the back of Mom's closet. Mom's old jewelry box, the one specifically named in that fraudulent will, The one Denise said I could have as Denise sees fit. Inside, beneath a tangle of old costume jewelry and a few faded photographs, there was an envelope. My name was written on the front in Mom's real handwriting, the shaky, familiar hand I recognized instantly, nothing like the clean signature on that forged will. My hands were shaking as I opened it. I'm going to read you what that letter said, as close to word for word as I can remember, because I have read it so many times since that day that I could probably recite it in my sleep. My darling Rachel, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And it means something has happened with the house that I was afraid of. I have to tell you something while my mind is still clear enough to write it properly. Because I know my good days are getting fewer. In December, Denise brought me some papers. I don't remember everything about that day. I know that scares you. And it scares me too. But I remember feeling confused. And I remember calling that nice Mr. Holbrook because something didn't feel right. I never went back to see him because Denise told me it was already handled. And I trusted her. The way I've always trusted both my girls. But something in me knew I needed to protect you, just in case. So I am writing this letter, and I am dating it. And I want you to know, whatever paper exists with my signature on it dated in January, I do not remember signing it in a way I understood. My true wishes have never changed. The house was built for both of my daughters. I want it split evenly between you and your sister, exactly as we discussed with Mr. Holbrook years ago, exactly as it always should be. I love you both so much it has broken my heart to watch what money can do to people. Even to good people, even to my own girls. Please don't let this destroy you and Denise. But please also don't let anyone take from you what is rightfully yours. I am so proud of the woman you became. Thank you for every single Sunday. All my love always. Mom. The letter was dated 3 days after that phone call to Mr. Holbrook. 3 days after. Mom realized something was wrong. She'd hidden it in the one place she knew. Denise would never think to look carefully inside a jewelry box. Denise had already dismissed as worthless. I sat on my closet floor and cried for an hour. Holding that letter against my chest, Patricia authenticated the letter. Immediately, a handwriting. Expert compared it against a dozen. Verified samples of Mom's real signature and writing, dated across the final 2 years of her life. It matched perfectly, tremor and all. Combined with the notary's statement, Mr. Holbrook's account of that December phone call, and the timeline itself, this letter didn't just cast doubt on the will. It shattered it completely. When Patricia submitted the letter into evidence, everything changed. Denise's attorney requested an emergency meeting, clearly hoping to negotiate a quiet settlement before this went any further. In front of a judge, I refused. I didn't want a quiet settlement. I wanted the truth on the record permanently, so that no one could ever whisper afterward that I'd taken something that wasn't mine. The final hearing took place. On a Thursday in late September, I wore my mother's old blue scarf, the one she used to wrap around her hair on Sunday mornings, because I wanted a piece of her with me in that room. Denise sat across the aisle, and for the first time since that meeting 11 days after the funeral, she looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in her face that wasn't defiance anymore. It was fear. The judge reviewed everything. The forged signatures' inconsistencies, the notary's sworn statement, Mr. Holbrook's account, the handwriting expert's analysis of the letter, and finally, the letter itself, read aloud in that courtroom in a voice that cracked slightly on the final line, "Thank you for every single Sunday." Then the judge looked directly at my sister and said the 4 words I mentioned at the very beginning of this story. This will is invalid. The original will, the one splitting everything evenly, was reinstated. The house would be sold, and the proceeds split 50-50, exactly as our mother had always intended, exactly as she'd fought to protect with her very last clear thoughts. Denise didn't look at me as she left the courtroom. She hasn't spoken to me since. I won't pretend this ending feels like a victory in the way you might expect. I got what was rightfully mine, what our mother wanted for me, but I lost my sister in the process. And some nights, that trade doesn't feel worth it at all. But I think about that letter constantly. I think about a woman losing pieces of her own mind, terrified, hiding a note in a jewelry box because some quiet, unbroken part of her still knew exactly what mattered. She protected me even as everything else slipped away from her. That's not something money can buy, and it's not something Denise could ever take. No matter whose name ended up on that piece of paper, if you're going through something like this, if someone in your family is trying to take advantage of a parent's failing mind for Their own gain, please. Don't wait like I almost did. Don't give people the benefit of the doubt, simply because they share your blood. Get everything in writing. Talk to a lawyer the moment something feels wrong. And if you have an aging parent, sit with them, really sit with them, while their mind is still clear enough to tell you the truth. Because the truth always finds a way out. Sometimes it takes a notary's handwritten note in the margin of a logbook. Sometimes it takes a forgotten phone call to an old family attorney. And sometimes it takes a mother's shaking hand, writing one final letter, tucked inside a jewelry box that everyone else thought was worthless. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please consider subscribing, because there are so many more stories like this one still waiting to be told.
Thank you watching for video. If you like this video, please subscribe the channel for upcoming new video. Thank you.